The dust cloud rising behind the departing wagon was the last thing Rebecca Ramirez saw before she truly understood she was alone. And as she watched her husband's business partner disappear over the horizon with what little money they had left in the bank, she realized the only thing standing between her and complete ruin was her own stubborn will to survive. The Arizona Territory stretched endlessly in every direction from the modest ranch house, the land she and Thomas had worked for 7 years before his heart gave out 3 months ago. At 24 years old, Rebecca had never imagined herself a widow, much less one responsible for 300 acres of scrubland, 40 head of cattle, and enough debt to make her stomach turn every time she thought about it. The year was 1878, and Mineral Point was a small but growing town 20 miles south, close enough for supplies but far enough that help never came quickly. She turned back toward the house, her black morning dress already covered in the fine red dust that seemed to coat everything in this part of the territory. The chickens needed feeding, the horses needed water, and there were at least a dozen fence posts that needed replacing before the cattle wandered too far. Thomas had always handled the heavy work while she managed the house and helped with the smaller tasks. Now, everything fell to her. Rebecca walked to the barn, her boots crunching against the dry earth. Inside, the 2 remaining horses nickered softly. She had already sold 3 to pay the most pressing debts, but she needed these 2 for basic ranch work. She grabbed a bucket and headed to the well, her arms already aching from the morning's work. The rope burned her palms as she pulled up the water, but she gritted her teeth and kept pulling. "Stubborn will not fix fence posts," she muttered to herself, echoing what Thomas used to say when she insisted she could handle tasks beyond her strength. But stubborn was all she had now. She spent the afternoon attempting to repair the nearest section of fence, hammering at posts that refused to go deep enough into the hard ground. Sweat dripped down her back, and her hands blistered despite the work gloves. By sunset, she had managed to secure exactly 2 posts, and she knew there were dozens more waiting. That night, she sat at the kitchen table with Thomas's account books spread before her. The numbers told a grim story. Between the debt to the bank, money owed to various suppliers in town, and the costs of simply keeping the ranch running, she had perhaps 3 months before she would lose everything. 3 months to somehow make the ranch profitable enough to start paying down what they owed. She pressed her hands against her tired eyes. Thomas had been a good man, a kind husband, but he had not been a particularly skilled businessman. He had taken loans when he should not have, trusted people who proved untrustworthy, and made optimistic projections that never quite came to fruition. His partner, Gerald Morrison, had seemed supportive right up until he withdrew his share of their joint account and left her with nothing but a note saying he could not afford to sink with a failing enterprise. Rebecca closed the books and looked around the small house. She had made curtains for the windows, braided rugs for the floors, planted herbs in boxes by the kitchen door. This was her home, the place where she had imagined raising children and growing old. She would not give it up without a fight. The next morning, she woke before dawn and forced herself through the same routine. Feed the animals, check the water, inspect the fence line. She was examining a broken gate when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Her hand instinctively went to the rifle she now carried everywhere, a necessary precaution for a woman living alone. A single rider appeared over the rise, leading a pack horse behind him. Rebecca raised the rifle slightly, not aiming but making it clear she was armed. The rider slowed his approach, raising one hand in a peaceful gesture. "Morning, madam," he called out when he was close enough to be heard without shouting. "Did not mean to startle you. Rebecca kept the rifle ready but lowered it slightly. The man appeared to be in his late 20s, maybe 28 or 29, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days' worth of beard growth. His clothes were dusty from travel but well maintained, and his horse looked healthy and well cared for. "State your business," Rebecca said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The rider stopped a respectful distance away. "Name's Vincent Garrett. I am looking for work, and I heard in town there might be a ranch out this way that could use a hand." Rebecca almost laughed. "You heard wrong. I cannot afford to pay anyone." Vincent nodded slowly, his eyes taking in the broken gate, the sagging fence line, the general air of disrepair that had crept over the property. "I can see you have got your hands full. Maybe we could work out an arrangement that does not involve much cash up front." "I just said I cannot pay you." "And I heard you," Vincent said calmly, "but there are other forms of payment. Room and board, for instance. A share of profits if the ranch starts turning around. I am not looking to get rich, madam. I just need a place to stay while I figure out my next move, and you look like you could use the help." Rebecca studied him carefully. She had learned to be cautious of strangers, especially men who appeared with convenient timing and easy promises. "Why would you work for nothing more than meals and a place to sleep?" Vincent dismounted slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. "Because I have been where you are. Not a widow," he added quickly, "but I know what it is to lose everything and have to build back from nothing. My family had a ranch in Texas. Comanches raided it 6 years back. My parents and younger brother did not make it. I have been drifting since then, working where I can, never staying long. Maybe I am tired of running." There was something in his voice, a weariness that Rebecca recognized because she felt it in her own bones. She wanted to trust him, needed the help he offered, but fear held her back. "I do not know you," she said finally. "No, madam, you do not. But you can ride into Mineral Point and ask about me if you want. I spent last night at the boarding house there. Mrs. Chen, who runs it, will tell you I paid for my room, did not cause trouble, and asked around respectfully about work opportunities. The sheriff, name of Patterson, he talked with me for a while. He can vouch that I am not wanted for anything." Rebecca considered this. It would take most of a day to ride to town and back, time she could not really afford to lose. But making a mistake about this stranger could cost her everything. "What kind of ranch work have you done?" she asked. "All kinds. I grew up on a working cattle ranch. Can rope, brand, break horses, mend fence, fix buildings, handle accounts if needed. I am not saying I am the best at everything, but I am competent and willing to learn what I do not know." "The fence needs work," Rebecca said slowly. "If you are serious about this arrangement, you can start there. I will ride to town tomorrow and check your story. If everything is as you say, we can discuss terms." Vincent nodded. "That is fair. Where would you like me to start?" Rebecca pointed to the section she had been struggling with. "The fence line runs for about 2 miles in that direction. At least 50 posts need replacing, maybe more. Tools are in the barn. I will need to settle my horses first, if you do not mind. There is space in the barn. Water trough is on the east side." Rebecca watched as Vincent led his horses away, noting how gently he handled them, how he checked their hooves and brushed them down before seeing to his own comfort. These were the actions of a man who understood ranch life, who knew that animals came first because your survival depended on them. She spent the rest of the morning working on the other side of the property, but her attention kept drifting toward where Vincent was working. By midday, when she brought him water and some bread and cheese, she saw he had already replaced 8 posts, working with steady efficiency. "You know what you are doing," she observed. Vincent accepted the water gratefully. "I told you I grew up doing this. Your husband passed recently." 3 months ago." Rebecca was not sure why she answered, maybe because Vincent's question had been gentle, not prying. "I am sorry for your loss. Cannot be easy managing all this alone." "No," Rebecca agreed. "It is not." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Vincent handed back the empty cup and returned to work without expecting further conversation. Rebecca appreciated that. She was not ready for sympathy or long discussions about her situation. That evening, she prepared a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and the last of the salted pork. She considered making Vincent eat in the barn, but that seemed needlessly cruel when he had worked hard all day. Instead, she set 2 places at the table and called him in when the food was ready. Vincent washed up at the pump outside before entering, removing his hat and leaving his boots by the door. "Smells good, madam, thank you. You worked for it," Rebecca said stiffly. "And my name is Rebecca. You can call me that." "Vincent," he replied, though she already knew his name. "Or Vince, if you prefer." They ate in silence for a few minutes before Vincent spoke again. "I replaced 14 posts today. Should be able to finish that section tomorrow if the weather holds." Rebecca nodded. "There is more fence that needs work beyond that." "I saw." "Looks like maybe a month of steady work to get everything secure. Longer if I am doing it alone. I can help with some of it." Vincent glanced at her hands, which were bandaged where blisters had broken. "No offense, Rebecca, but you have got enough to handle without tearing your hands apart on fence posts. Let me take care of the heavy work. You focus on keeping the animals fed and the house running. That is a full-time job right there." Rebecca wanted to argue, to insist she could handle everything, but the truth was she was exhausted. "I will ride to town tomorrow and check on what you told me." I would expect nothing less. After dinner, Rebecca showed Vincent to the small bunkhouse behind the main building. It had not been used since Thomas's hired hand left 2 years ago, and it needed cleaning, but it was structurally sound. "I will get this fixed up," Vincent said, looking around at the dusty interior. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Rebecca nodded and left him to settle in. Back in the main house, she locked the door and checked the windows, her rifle within easy reach. Trust would not come easily, not after everything she had lost. The next morning, she rode to Mineral Point, leaving Vincent to continue working on the fence. The town was busier than usual, with several freight wagons being loaded near the general store. Rebecca tied her horse outside the boarding house and went inside. Mrs. Chen looked up from her ledger with a warm smile. "Mrs. Ramirez, good to see you. How are you managing?" "Getting by," Rebecca said. "I have a question about a man who stayed here recently." "Vincent Garrett." "Oh yes, the cowboy who arrived 2 nights ago. Polite young man. Paid in advance, caused no trouble. He asked about work opportunities in the area." "Did he say where he came from?" "Texas originally, I believe. But he has been moving around quite a bit. He had that look about him, you know, the kind of restlessness that comes from loss." Rebecca thanked Mrs. Chen and headed to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Patterson was a practical man in his 50s who had known Thomas and had been sympathetic to Rebecca's situation after his death. "Morning, Rebecca," he greeted her. "What brings you to town?" "I wanted to ask about Vincent Garrett." Patterson nodded. "Figured you might. He came by yesterday, introduced himself proper. Said he was looking for honest work. I asked around about him. He is not wanted anywhere, and the last town he worked in, down near Tucson, the ranch owner there said he was reliable and skilled. Only left because the owner's son came back from the war and took over the work." "Do you think he is trustworthy?" Patterson considered this. "I think he is a man who has seen hard times and is trying to find his footing again. Whether that makes him trustworthy is something you will have to decide for yourself, but I did not see any red flags if that is what you are asking." Rebecca nodded slowly. "He showed up at my ranch yesterday. offered to work for room and board. And you are wondering if that is too good to be true. Exactly. Patterson leaned back in his chair. Could be he is running from something I have not uncovered yet. Could be he is exactly what he appears to be, a skilled ranch hand who needs work and saw an opportunity. My advice: keep your guard up, but do not be so suspicious that you turn away help you clearly need. I have seen your property, Rebecca. You cannot maintain it alone. It was what she already knew but did not want to admit. She thanked the sheriff and stopped at the general store to pick up a few supplies she could not produce herself, carefully counting out coins from her dwindling funds. The ride back to the ranch took most of the afternoon. As she approached, she could see Vincent had made significant progress. The fence line looked straight and sturdy, and he had moved on to repairing the gate. "How did your inquiries go?" he asked when she rode up. "You are who you said you are," Rebecca replied. "The sheriff vouched for you, and Mrs. Chen said you were a model guest. So I can stay." Rebecca dismounted, her decision made. "Yes, room and board in exchange for ranch work. If the ranch starts turning a profit, we will discuss additional compensation." Vincent extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Rebecca shook it. His grip was firm but not crushing, his palm calloused from hard work. "You will not regret this," he said. "I hope not." Over the following weeks, Rebecca watched Vincent transform the ranch. He woke before dawn and worked until dark, repairing buildings, fixing equipment, and gradually bringing order to the chaos that had been overwhelming her. He was skilled and efficient, but more than that, he seemed to genuinely care about doing the work right. They fell into a comfortable routine. Rebecca handled the cooking and the smaller daily tasks while Vincent managed the heavy labor. They ate meals together but kept conversation to practical matters, discussing what needed to be done and how to prioritize their limited resources. One evening about a month after Vincent's arrival, Rebecca was going over the account books when she realized something remarkable. For the first time since Thomas's death, she was not behind on the daily work. The ranch was functioning again. "We need to round up the cattle," Vincent said during dinner that night. "I have been surveying the property and they have scattered more than they should. We are probably missing some." "I know," Rebecca said. "Thomas usually hired extra help for the roundup, but I cannot afford that. We can do it ourselves if we are smart about it. It will take longer, but it is possible." "That is a lot of ground to cover with just 2 people." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "What if we focused on getting them into better pasture closer to the house? The fence is secure now in the north section. We could move them there, make them easier to manage and keep track of." It made sense, and Rebecca found herself increasingly trusting Vincent's judgment on these matters. He had proven his competence over and over. They spent the next week on horseback from sunrise to sunset, gradually herding the scattered cattle toward the northern pasture. It was exhausting work, and there were moments of frustration when the animals refused to cooperate, but there was also something exhilarating about it. Rebecca felt more alive than she had in months. One afternoon, they were chasing down a particularly stubborn cow when Rebecca's horse stumbled in a prairie dog hole. She felt herself flying through the air and hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind from her lungs. Vincent was off his horse in seconds, kneeling beside her. "Rebecca, are you hurt?" She could not answer immediately, fighting to catch her breath. Vincent's hands were gentle but thorough as he checked for obvious injuries. "Talk to me," he urged. "Where does it hurt?" Finally, Rebecca managed to gasp. "Just knocked the wind out. I am all right." "Are you sure? Nothing broken?" She moved experimentally, wincing at the bruises she could already feel forming. "Just my pride, and I will be sore tomorrow." Vincent helped her sit up, his arm steadying her. "Your horse seems fine, just shaken. That was a bad fall. I have had worse, Rebecca said, though she was not sure that was true. She had certainly felt better. We should head back. You need to rest. The cattle will still be there tomorrow. Come on. Vincent helped her onto her horse and stayed close beside her during the ride back, watching to make sure she did not sway in the saddle. Once at the ranch, he helped her dismount and insisted on seeing to both horses while she went inside. Rebecca cleaned up and changed clothes, her body starting to protest every movement. She heard Vincent at the pump outside and then his footsteps approaching the house. He knocked gently. I made some willow bark tea. It will help with the pain. Rebecca opened the door to find Vincent holding a steaming cup. She accepted it, surprised by the gesture. Thank you. You took a hard fall. Make sure you rest tonight. There was genuine concern in his eyes, and Rebecca felt something shift inside her. This was not just a business arrangement anymore, not just an employer and worker. Somewhere along the way, Vincent had become something more, not quite a friend, but not a stranger either. I will be fine, she said softly, but thank you for the tea. That night, as she lay in bed fighting off the aches from her fall, Rebecca found herself thinking about Vincent in ways she had not expected. She noticed how his face lit up when he talked about the ranch's progress, how patient he was with the animals, how he always made sure she ate enough at meals. Small things, but they added up to a picture of a man who was genuinely good. But Rebecca was not ready for those kinds of thoughts. Thomas had only been gone for months. It felt like a betrayal to even consider another man, even in the abstract. She pushed the thoughts away and focused instead on the practical matters at hand. They had made good progress with the cattle, and if they could bring them all in safely, she might be able to sell a few in the fall. That would help with the debt. The next morning, despite her soreness, Rebecca was up at her usual time. Vincent was already in the barn, but he came out when he heard her moving around. You should take the day to recover, he said. I am fine. You are limping. It is just bruises, nothing that will not heal, Vincent sighed. You are stubborn, you know that, I have been told. Rebecca managed a small smile. But stubborn is how I am still here. Fair enough. But at least let me handle the riding today. You can work on other things around here. It was a reasonable compromise, and Rebecca agreed. She spent the day catching up on mending, preserving vegetables from the small garden she had been neglecting, and doing other tasks that did not require being on horseback. By evening, Vincent returned with news that he had found another dozen head of cattle and moved them to the northern pasture. I think we have found most of them now. We are probably down to 35 total, but that is better than I feared. Thomas started with 40, Rebecca said. Losing 5 is not terrible, all things considered. They ate dinner together, and for the first time, the conversation drifted beyond ranch business. Vincent asked about how she and Thomas had ended up in Arizona territory. We came from New Mexico, Rebecca explained. Thomas wanted his own place, and land was cheaper here. We bought the ranch 7 years ago when I was 17. It was hard work, but it was ours, you know. We had plans for it. What kind of plans? Build the herd, maybe start breeding horses. Thomas was good with horses. He could break even the most difficult ones without breaking their spirit. Rebecca smiled at the memory. He said animals responded better to patience than force. He was right about that, Vincent said. What about you? What did you want? No one had asked Rebecca that in a long time. I wanted a home, a real home, not just a place to live. I wanted children eventually and neighbors close enough to visit and a community. Thomas promised me all of that. He did not deliver. He tried. But the ranch took everything we had. There was never enough money for the extras, and we were too far from town to build the friendships I wanted. And then his heart gave out, and suddenly it did not matter what we had planned. Vincent was quiet for a moment. I am sorry. For what it is worth, I think you are doing an incredible job keeping this place going. Most people would have given up by now." "I considered it," Rebecca admitted. "After Gerald took the money and left, I seriously thought about just walking away. But where would I go? This is all I have." "It is more than that, though, is not it? This place means something to you." Rebecca nodded. "It does. Even with all the hardship, I cannot imagine letting it go without a fight." "Then we will keep fighting," Vincent said simply. That we settled over Rebecca like a warm blanket. She was not alone anymore, and that made all the difference. As summer progressed into early fall, the ranch continued to improve. Vincent's tireless work had restored it to functionality, and Rebecca found herself able to breathe again without the constant weight of panic. They worked together seamlessly now, each understanding their role and trusting the other to handle their responsibilities. But Rebecca was also becoming increasingly aware of Vincent in ways that had nothing to do with ranch work. She noticed the way his muscles moved when he lifted heavy beams, the rare but genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face, the kindness in his voice when he talked to the horses. She found herself looking forward to their evening meals together, to the quiet conversations that had become deeper and more personal over time. One evening in late September, Vincent came in from the barn looking troubled. "What is wrong?" Rebecca asked. "Nothing is wrong exactly. I have just been thinking about the winter. We need to make sure we have enough hay stored, and the roof on the barn needs reinforcing before the snow comes. Also, some of your cattle are not going to make it through a hard winter. They are too thin." Rebecca's heart sank. "We should sell them now then, while we can." "That is what I was thinking. If we take them to market in Tucson, we might get a decent price. It would mean being away for a week or more, but the money could make the difference in whether you can pay down your debts this year." "You mean we would both go?" Vincent hesitated. "I was thinking I could take them while you stay here and mind the ranch." "Absolutely not. I'm not staying here alone while you handle my business. We go together or I go alone." "Rebecca, the trail to Tucson is not safe for a woman traveling alone." "Then it is good I will not be alone. We go together, Vincent. That is final." He studied her face and must have seen the determination there because he nodded. "All right. We go together. But we will need to leave soon, before the weather turns." They spent the next few days preparing for the journey, selecting the cattle that would not survive winter and making arrangements for the animals staying behind. Rebecca packed supplies while Vincent checked their gear and planned the route. The morning they left, Rebecca locked up the house with a strange mixture of anxiety and excitement. She had not been further than Mineral Point since Thomas died, and the prospect of a real journey was both frightening and thrilling. They moved slowly, keeping the cattle together and stopping frequently to let them graze and rest. Vincent was an excellent trail guide, always aware of their surroundings and potential dangers. At night, they took turns keeping watch, though Rebecca noticed Vincent often stayed awake longer than his share, making sure she got enough rest. On the third night, they camped near a small stream. Rebecca was cleaning up after their simple dinner when Vincent spoke. "Can I ask you something personal, I suppose? Do you ever think about what comes next? After you save the ranch, I mean. What do you want your life to look like?" Rebecca considered the question. "I have not thought much beyond just surviving." "Why do you ask?" Vincent poked at the fire with a stick. "I have been thinking about my own future lately. I have been drifting for 6 years, never putting down roots anywhere. Part of me wonders if it is time to stop running." "Running from what?" "The past, the memories, the guilt of being the one who survived when my family did not." Vincent's voice was quiet but steady. "I was out checking the far pasture when the raiders came. By the time I got back, it was over." I have always felt like I should have been there, like maybe I could have made a difference." Rebecca moved closer to the fire to him. "You cannot know that. You might have just died with them. Maybe. But at least I would not have spent 6 years wondering. Is that why you stayed at my ranch?" "Because you are tired of running." Vincent looked at her, the firelight playing across his features. "At first, maybe. But it has become more than that. Working with you these past months, building something instead of just drifting, it has reminded me what it feels like to have a purpose. To have a home." Rebecca's heart was beating faster. "Vincent, I know it is too soon," he said quickly. "I know you are still mourning your husband, and I am not trying to rush you into anything. I just wanted you to know that I am not planning to leave when winter comes. If you will still have me, I would like to stay on, not just as a hired hand, but as a real partner in making the ranch work." "A partner in business," Vincent clarified. "I have some money saved up, not much, but enough to help with supplies and maybe pay down some of your debt. We could make it official, split the ownership and the profits." Rebecca was quiet, processing this unexpected offer. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to accept the security and partnership he offered. But another part hesitated, wondering if she was ready to tie herself to another person after losing Thomas. "Can I think about it?" she asked finally. "Of course. I did not mean to pressure you." "You did not. I just need time to consider what it would mean." They continued to Tucson the next day, and Rebecca found her mind constantly returning to Vincent's offer. She watched him work with the cattle, handle negotiations with other travelers they passed, and set up camp each night with efficient competence. He would be a good partner, she realized. More than that, he would be an equal, someone who respected her opinions and did not try to manage her. Tucson was larger and busier than Mineral Point, with dozens of people crowding the streets. Vincent led them to the stockyards, where buyers examined cattle and made offers. Rebecca was prepared to negotiate hard, but the first buyer they encountered made a fair offer that Vincent advised her to accept. "We could probably get a little more if we wait," he said quietly, "but the price is good, and there is value in a sure thing." Rebecca agreed, and they completed the sale. Walking away with actual money in her pocket felt surreal after months of scraping by. "We should celebrate," Vincent said. "There is a decent restaurant near the hotel, my treat." "You do not have to do that. I want to." "You have worked hard for this, Rebecca. You deserve a proper meal." That evening, cleaned up and wearing the one good dress she had packed, Rebecca met Vincent in the hotel lobby. He had shaved and put on a clean shirt, and Rebecca was struck again by how handsome he was when he was not covered in trail dust. The restaurant was nicer than anywhere Rebecca had eaten in years. They ordered steak and potatoes, and Vincent even splurged on a bottle of wine. "To successful partnerships," he said, raising his glass. Rebecca raised hers as well, meeting his eyes. "I have been thinking about your offer. And I want to say yes, but I need to be honest with you first. Thomas and I were married, but toward the end things were not good between us. He made decisions without consulting me, took financial risks that frightened me, and sometimes I felt more like his housekeeper than his wife. When he died, along with the grief, there was also this terrible relief that I could finally make my own choices." Rebecca took a breath. "If we are going to be partners, I need to know you will treat me as an equal, that my opinions will matter." Vincent reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. "Rebecca, I would not have made the offer if I did not already see you as an equal. You are one of the strongest, most capable people I have ever met. I do not want to manage you or control you. I want to work beside you." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "Then yes, I accept your partnership offer." Vincent's smile was brighter than she had ever seen it. "We will draw up papers when we get back to Mineral Point. Make it legal and proper. Agreed. They talked through the evening about their plans for the ranch, ideas tumbling over each other in their excitement. They would use the money from the cattle sale to pay down the most pressing debts and buy supplies for winter. In the spring, they would focus on building the herd back up and maybe start with a few horses, as Thomas had wanted. With two people working together, genuinely together, it all seemed possible. The journey back to the ranch felt different, lighter somehow. Rebecca and Vincent talked easily, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for the future. Rebecca learned that Vincent had wanted to be a teacher before his family was killed, that he loved reading and had a small collection of books in his saddlebags. Vincent learned that Rebecca had grown up helping her father in his print shop, that she could read and write fluently and had always loved learning. "We should get more books," Vincent said. "Build a real library. Knowledge is never wasted." "That would be wonderful," Rebecca agreed. "Thomas never understood why I wanted books when we could barely afford food. Books feed a different kind of hunger." When they finally arrived back at the ranch, Rebecca was surprised by how much it felt like coming home. The house looked small and weathered, but it was hers, and now it was Vincent's too. They spent the next weeks preparing for winter, working with focused intensity to make sure everything was secure. Vincent reinforced the barn roof and chinked gaps in the walls while Rebecca preserved food and checked their supply stores. They worked side by side, and Rebecca found herself increasingly comfortable with Vincent's presence, with the casual way he would ask her opinion or the gentle teasing that had crept into their interactions. One afternoon in late October, they were stacking firewood when Vincent suddenly said, "I think I am falling in love with you." Rebecca nearly dropped the log she was holding. "What?" Vincent set down his own load and turned to face her fully. "I did not mean to say it like that, but it is true. These past months working with you, getting to know you, I have developed feelings that go beyond partnership or friendship. I understand if you do not feel the same way. I know you are still grieving Thomas, and I will respect whatever boundaries you need. But I could not keep pretending I only see you as a business partner." Rebecca's heart was racing. She had been trying not to acknowledge her own growing feelings, telling herself it was too soon, that she should focus on practical matters. But hearing Vincent put it into words made her realize she could not hide from the truth anymore. "I think I might be falling in love with you too," she said quietly, "and that terrifies me." Vincent stepped closer. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I lost Thomas, and it nearly destroyed me. Because I swore I would never depend on anyone that much again. Because falling in love means being vulnerable, and I cannot afford vulnerability." "Love does not have to mean losing yourself," Vincent said gently. "It can mean finding someone who makes you stronger, who stands beside you instead of trying to control you. That is what I want to be for you, Rebecca. Not someone who takes away your independence, but someone who supports it." Rebecca looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "I am not ready for everything," she admitted, "but I would like to try, slowly." Vincent's smile was soft and understanding. "Slowly is good, we have time." He reached out and gently took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. Rebecca squeezed back, allowing herself this small intimacy. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened gradually. They held hands sometimes in the evenings. Vincent started sitting closer to her during meals. There were moments when their eyes would meet and hold, charged with unspoken feeling. But Vincent never pushed for more, content to let Rebecca set the pace. The first snow came in early November, blanketing the ranch in white. Rebecca stood at the window watching it fall, marveling at how different this winter felt from the last one. A year ago, Thomas had still been alive but increasingly frail, and Rebecca had been terrified of what would happen when he was gone. Now Thomas was gone, but she was not alone. She had Vincent and she had hope. "Beautiful, is not it?" Vincent said, coming to stand beside her. "It is." Rebecca leaned slightly against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They stood like that for a long time, watching the snow fall in comfortable silence. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Rebecca found herself studying Vincent's profile. He was reading one of his books, his face relaxed and content. She realized with sudden clarity that she did not just love him, she trusted him completely. That trust was worth more than romance, more than passion. It was the foundation for everything else. "Vincent," she said softly. He looked up. "Yes, I love you." His expression transformed, joy lighting his features from within. "I love you too." He set down his book and moved to sit beside her on the sofa. When he cupped her face in his hands, she leaned into the touch. Their first kiss was gentle and sweet, a promise more than a demand. Rebecca felt something inside her unlock, a part of herself she had kept guarded since Thomas's death. When they finally pulled apart, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "We will take this as slowly as you need." "I know," Rebecca whispered, "and I love you for that." Winter settled over the ranch, but inside the house, warmth grew. Rebecca and Vincent navigated their new relationship with care, learning each other's rhythms and boundaries. They kissed often now, held each other close in the evenings, but Vincent made no moves toward greater intimacy, waiting for Rebecca to indicate she was ready. Christmas came and they celebrated simply, exchanging small gifts. Rebecca had knitted Vincent a warm scarf. Vincent gave her a beautiful leather-bound journal and a set of pens. "For your thoughts," he said. "You always seem to have so much going on in your head. Maybe writing it down would help." Rebecca was touched by how well he understood her. That night, she wrote her first entry, documenting the strange and wonderful journey that had brought her from despair to hope, from loneliness to love. In January, they rode to Mineral Point to formalize their business partnership. The lawyer drew up papers that made them equal owners of the ranch, and they both signed. Afterward, as they walked back to their horses, Vincent said, "There is something else I would like to make official." "What is that?" He stopped and turned to face her. "Rebecca Ramirez, would you consider marrying me?" Rebecca's breath caught. "Are you asking because it is practical, because people will talk about us living together otherwise?" "I am asking because I love you and want to spend my life with you. The practical benefits are secondary." Vincent took her hands in his. "I know it has not been a year since Thomas died. I know some people will judge the timing, but I do not want to waste time pretending we are just business partners when we are so much more. If you are not ready, I will wait. I will wait as long as you need. But I wanted you to know where my heart is." Rebecca thought about her conversation with Vincent months ago, about what she wanted her life to look like. She wanted a home, and she had that. She wanted a partner who respected her, and she had that too. She wanted love, real love built on trust and equality, and Vincent offered all of that. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Vincent pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply right there on the main street of Mineral Point. Rebecca did not care who saw or what they thought. She was happy, truly happy, for the first time in longer than she could remember. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the courthouse, with Sheriff Patterson and Mrs. Chen as witnesses. Rebecca wore a new dress she had carefully budgeted for, a deep blue that Vincent said made her eyes shine. Vincent wore his best clothes, and he had gotten a proper haircut for the occasion. That night, in the house that was now truly theirs together, Vincent carried Rebecca over the threshold despite her laughing protests that it was silly. "Maybe," he agreed, setting her down gently, "but I wanted to do it anyway." Rebecca reached up and pulled him down for a kiss. Thank you for being patient with me, for letting me come to this in my own time. Thank you for trusting me with your heart, Vincent replied. I promise to treat it with care. Their wedding night was tender and gentle, Vincent attuned to Rebecca's needs and comfort. She had been nervous, but Vincent made her feel safe and cherished. Afterward, lying in his arms, Rebecca felt a completeness she had never experienced before. I never knew it could be like this, she murmured. Like what? Equal. Thomas was not cruel, but he saw marriage as him leading and me following. You make me feel like we are on the same journey together. Vincent kissed her forehead. That is exactly what we are, partners in everything. Spring came, and with it, new energy and possibilities. Rebecca discovered she was pregnant in April, and the news filled them both with joy and anticipation. A summer baby, Vincent said, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. Are you happy? Terrified and happy, Rebecca admitted. I have never done this before. We will figure it out together, like everything else. As Rebecca's pregnancy progressed, Vincent took on more of the physical labor, insisting she rest and take care of herself. They hired a young man from town to help with the heaviest work, using some of the profits from their successful winter. The ranch was finally profitable, and they had paid down enough of the debt that Rebecca could breathe easy. In August, Rebecca went into labor on a hot afternoon. Vincent rode for the doctor in town while Mrs. Chen, who had become a good friend, stayed with Rebecca. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Rebecca feared something was wrong. But finally, after 14 hours, she delivered a healthy baby boy. Vincent rushed in as soon as the doctor said it was safe, his face a mixture of awe and love as he looked at his son. He is perfect, Vincent whispered. You are amazing. They named him Thomas Vincent Garrett, honoring both the past and the present. Young Tommy, as they called him, had his mother's dark hair and his father's eyes. Those first months of parenthood were exhausting but wonderful. Vincent was an involved father, helping with nighttime feedings and diaper changes, never acting as though child rearing was solely Rebecca's responsibility. They worked as a team, just as they did with everything else. When Tommy was 6 months old, Rebecca found herself pregnant again. This time, she was less frightened, more confident in her ability to handle what was coming. 2 children close together, Vincent said, his hand on her growing belly. We are going to be outnumbered soon. We can handle it, Rebecca said with more certainty than she felt. Their daughter was born the following summer, an easier birth than Tommy had been. They named her Sarah Rose, and she had her father's temperament, calm and watchful. Life on the ranch settled into a busy but satisfying rhythm. Vincent and Rebecca worked together to build their herd and start the horse breeding program they had discussed. They added on to the house, creating more space for their growing family. They hired help when they needed it, but they remained equal partners in all decisions. When Tommy was 5 and Sarah was 3, Rebecca found out she was pregnant once more. This time, they welcomed twin boys, Daniel and David, who brought chaos and joy in equal measure. 4 children, Vincent said one evening as they surveyed the dinner table, where their offspring were engaged in animated conversation about the new foal that had been born that morning. Did you ever imagine this when I first rode up to your ranch? Rebecca thought back to that desperate time when she had been alone and frightened and ready to give up. No, I imagined survival maybe, but not happiness, not this. Vincent reached over and took her hand. I am glad I took a chance on you. I am glad I took a chance on you too. The ranch prospered over the years. They eventually paid off all of Thomas's debts and even bought the adjacent property when it came up for sale. Their cattle operation became known for quality stock, and Vincent's horse training skills brought buyers from as far as California. But more than the material success, Rebecca treasured the life they had built together. She had the home she had always wanted, filled with love and laughter. She had neighbors now, other ranch families who became friends. She had a partner who valued her mind as much as her labor, who split both work and joy equally with her. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent surprised Rebecca with a gift. It was a hand-carved sign that read, "Ramirez Garrett Ranch." "Our names together," he said. "The way it should always have been." Rebecca traced the carved letters with her fingers. "It is perfect." They hung the sign at the entrance to the property, a declaration to the world that this was a place built by two people working as one. As the years passed, Rebecca and Vincent grew older together, their love deepening with time and shared experience. They weathered droughts and hard winters, celebrated births and mourned losses. Their children grew into capable adults who helped run the ever-expanding ranch. Tommy showed an aptitude for business and took over managing the books and sales. Sarah had her father's gift with horses and built a renowned breeding program. The twins, inseparable as always, worked together handling the cattle operations. When Rebecca was 50, she and Vincent took a rare trip alone, leaving the ranch in their children's capable hands. They traveled to San Francisco, seeing the ocean for the first time together. Standing on the beach, watching the waves roll in, Rebecca reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had not stopped at my ranch that day?" she asked Vincent. He pulled her close. "I probably would have kept drifting, never finding a place to belong. You gave me a home, Rebecca. You gave me a purpose. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Rebecca corrected. "That is how real partnership works." They returned to the ranch renewed and ready for whatever came next. The years continued to pass, marked by grandchildren and new ventures, challenges met and overcome together. One evening, when Rebecca was 62 and Vincent 65, they sat on the porch they had expanded 3 times to accommodate their growing family. The original house was now the heart of a much larger compound, with homes for each of their children and their families dotting the property. "We built something good here," Vincent said, surveying the land they had worked for decades. "We did," Rebecca agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." Vincent turned to her, his hair now silver but his eyes still the same warm brown she had fallen in love with. "Do you have any regrets?" Rebecca considered the question seriously. Her life had not been easy. There had been loss and hardship, moments of fear and doubt. But through it all, she had Vincent by her side, and together they had created something meaningful. "No regrets," she said finally. "Not a single one." As the sun set over the Arizona territory they called home, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Rebecca and Vincent sat together in comfortable silence. Their children and grandchildren would arrive soon for the weekly family dinner, filling the house with noise and love. But for now, it was just the two of them, the way it had been in those early days when they were learning to trust each other. Rebecca thought about the frightened widow she had been, desperate and alone, watching her husband's partner disappear over the horizon with everything she had left. She thought about the wandering cowboy who had arrived offering help when she most needed it. She thought about how they had built a life together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of trust at a time. It had not been a fairy tale. Real life never was. But it had been real and true, and full of the kind of love that sustained through hardship and celebrated in joy. The kind of love that grew from respect and partnership, from choosing each other every day for decades. "I love you," Rebecca said softly. Vincent squeezed her hand. "I love you too. Always have, always will." And as their family began to arrive, children and grandchildren spilling out of wagons and on horseback, calling greetings and bringing news and laughter, Rebecca knew that this was what she had been fighting for all those years ago. Not just the land or the house or the ranch itself, but this, the family and love and belonging that made it all worthwhile. The Ramirez Garrett ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down through generations. But the foundation would always be the partnership between a desperate widow and a wandering cowboy who found each other when they both needed it most and built something beautiful together. Years later, when Rebecca was 75 and Vincent 78, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a huge gathering. All 4 of their children were there with their families, plus 13 grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch had grown into one of the most successful operations in the territory, respected for both the quality of their livestock and their fair treatment of workers. During the celebration, Tommy stood up to make a toast. "To my parents, who showed us all what it means to be true partners. You built this ranch together, raised us together, and faced every challenge together. You taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. Here is to 50 more years." Everyone laughed and cheered, knowing that 50 more years was unlikely but appreciating the sentiment. Later that night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Rebecca and Vincent walked slowly out to the fence line where Vincent had done his first day of work all those years ago. "You remember that first day?" Rebecca asked. "When you showed up and insisted on helping me?" "I remember thinking you were the most stubborn woman I had ever met," Vincent said with a chuckle. "Standing there with your rifle, covered in dust, determined to do everything yourself. I remember thinking you were either crazy or desperate to work for nothing but room and board." "I was desperate," Vincent admitted. "Desperate for a place to belong, though I did not realize it at the time." Rebecca leaned against the fence, looking out over land that had become home in every sense of the word. "We were both desperate. But we found each other, and somehow that desperation turned into something beautiful." Vincent put his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him, their bodies fitting together as naturally now as they had for 50 years. "No regrets?" he asked, echoing the question from years before. "Not a single one," Rebecca confirmed. They stood there together as the stars came out, 2 people who had weathered everything life could throw at them and come through stronger for it. The ranch was quiet now, the evening work done, the animals settled for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new joys. But tonight was for remembering and being grateful. Rebecca thought about the young widow she had been, angry and frightened and alone. She wished she could go back and tell that woman that everything would be all right. That help was coming in the form of a kind-eyed cowboy who would become her partner in every sense of the word. She wished she could tell her younger self not to be afraid of love, that opening her heart again would be the best decision she ever made. But maybe that young widow had to go through the fear to appreciate the joy that came after. Maybe the journey was part of what made the destination so sweet. "Ready to head back?" Vincent asked eventually. "In a minute," Rebecca said. "I just want to stand here a little longer and appreciate everything we have." So they stood together in the starlight, 2 people who had started as strangers and become partners, then lovers, then spouses, and finally, after 50 years, 2 halves of one whole. The ranch spread out around them, a testament to what could be built when 2 people worked together in love and trust. Eventually, they walked slowly back to the house, hand in hand as they had been for 5 decades. Tomorrow would come soon enough, with its demands and responsibilities. But tonight they had each other, and that had always been enough. Inside the house, Rebecca prepared for bed while Vincent locked up and banked the fire. These small domestic rituals, repeated thousands of times over the years, held their own kind of magic. When they finally lay down together, Vincent pulled Rebecca close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For taking a chance on me. For building this life with me. For choosing me every day for 50 years. Rebecca turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for showing up when I needed you most. For being patient when I was difficult. For loving me even when I was not sure I could love again." They kissed, a soft, gentle kiss that held 50 years of love and commitment. "Good night, my love," Vincent murmured. "Good night," Rebecca replied. And in the morning, they would wake up together and start another day, working side by side as they always had. The ranch would need tending, their family would need them, life would continue its steady march forward. But through it all, they would have each other, partners in every sense, united in love and purpose. The story that had started with a desperate widow and a wandering cowboy had become a legacy. Proof that sometimes the hardest times lead to the greatest blessings, and that real love, built on respect and partnership, could weather any storm and grow stronger with each passing year.